website. Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. So those are some of the things, the focus, the ideas, the information that we're gathering that then can be implemented into our everyday work and what's going out there on the ground. So we, in like Paul said, when we first started this, it was like, okay, we could go out and just do everything. Let's do everything at once. But instead, we pulled back and really looked at the big picture. And I had a lot of help from my steering committee, which I'll talk about in a second. And then we just had to focus on a few things. Focus on a few things that we thought that we, could push forward at least in the next couple years, and then take a step back and see if they're going in the right direction. So one of those is EcoNet. And just to give you, for those of you who aren't familiar with EcoNet, let me give you a really short history. Back in 2006, when the partnership was just getting going and we were trying to figure out what the partnership should do for education and outreach, a number of people got together for a couple of brainstorming forums. Raise your hand if you remember being there. So there's a number of people in the room that were at those, and a lot of the information and ideas that were generated from that, there were a lot. Some of those were implemented, and others of those are on the table. And many of those you will be talking about in more detail in your working sessions this afternoon, because they were very broad, and we had to depend on our kind of how we translated that into real, actual, or actions. But we now have a formalized Eco Network. When I got the list of current EcoNet members, it was half what we have today. So there's actually 450 members now, and there's only supposed to be at least 170 here today. So there is a lot, over double that amount of people who have said, yes, we want to be a part of this effort in Puget Sound. That represents 250 organizations, and like I said before, huge variety of organizations. Everybody wants to play a part on this. The online database is one tool that we wanted just to get everybody to be able to see who else is part of that. And how many of you had gone into that database that you signed up for? So we have a lot of work to do to get you in there. Two parts of that database is your organizational information and your personal membership information. And personal membership information, so you can network with each other, so you can see who of the different organizations is a part of this, where around the sound they are, and you can search by location, organization, and we'll keep enhancing that as we get feedback from you on what would be useful. The other part is the description of your organization, and that is going to be totally necessary for us to create our search engine on our website that will connect the public with your organization. So one of the things is when the public starts to wonder where they can find out more information, there's me and Paul, and we're certainly not going to be talking to all those people. It doesn't make sense, and that is the reason. I knew all along, Bill says that, great for Kristen to be up there. Well, I'm not so worried because I've got all of you. So that is definitely, you're my strength in this, and I know that that's how we'll be successful. But plugging the public into you is really necessary. So the public will go on, find the organization that is nearest them where they can find out more information. But they can't get to you if your organizational information is not filled out. So they can you'll be seeing emails from me in the next few weeks. Summit on January 28th, here we are, yay. That will be followed by, and now is when I want you to pull out the sheet in your packets, on coordination days. So overwhelmingly, the feedback from the January 6th summit or forums was you need to develop a network. And they called it the Communications, Education, and Outreach Network, but CEO Network didn't really have the same ring as EcoNet. So there was also, strong support for having this broad network, but bringing it down to the local level, because you and I know that that's really where all the work gets done. And that's where the true day-to-day coordination happens and the connections are made. So how do we, there's only so much that we can get done at a broad EcoNet level. How do we form these networks and build on these networks in the local area? And that's why you're all sitting at tables that you are sitting at with names of an area on there. And when we were talking about how to split this all out, course, the idea of splitting it out by action area came up. But first of all, that's not what a network is about. People and about building trust and relationships and coordinating with people. And so we wanted to draw the lines where people work. So we have drawn some lines, and they're not. Well, at least this is our proposal. Is up at the back, and some of them aren't quite accurate, but it's also the labels that you have on your tables. And these are places where either there's an existing network that wants to expand and to work with the partnership, or where we think that it will be most natural for people to get together and coordinate. So on the back, there's a list of the regions or the areas, the dates for these coordination days, and they're 2 days long. The convener, so the WSU Extension staff who's just helping convene this and do some of the logistical work, and then the contact information for that person. The 2 days, generally you can read all the details on the front at a later time, or right now. I can see most of you are joining. But basically, it's that the first day is about building relationships. So it's me and partnership staff and watershed leads and everyone who's doing work in that area getting together and face-to-face, because I think that's where the work and the connections really happen instead of just through a database or through email. And have a day of listening and getting to know you and building relationships. The second day, and these won't happen in this order necessarily in every area, but the second day is about sitting down in those networks and actually hashing out how we're going to move forward. So this is not a once-off. This is a building a network that will continue on. And the idea behind that is, as we were talking before, not this, see this list of 25, or sometimes it's 100 in many areas of things that we're doing, or angles that we're pushing. It's the salmon, it's the rockfish, it's the eelgrass, it's shoreline hardening, you name it, and try to see if we can't use at least a percentage of that energy together to push a few things forward together. So instead of all of us kind of pushing on our own rock and trying to eke it along, say, okay, let's all, just for a second, maybe just for fun, let's all try to push the rock together, this one rock, and if we get it to where we want it, then we can all back off and go to the next rock and see if we can't push that. And it doesn't mean that, especially in this next biennium, that you obviously are all tied into either grants or funding or your own agency or organization's priorities. Understand that, but I know also from being on the ground that there's always some flexibility and there's some extra energy and time to work with others and to move some priorities forward. And hopefully we'll just get better at it. So by the next biennium, we'll have some real specifics about how it needs to work, and that helps me get funding. So if I can tell the story of we have done this for 2 years, this is how it works really well, these people just need help and support, and that is a big story to tell.
Here, let me jump in because I have a funny thing yesterday, because she's talking about funding and how difficult it is when you go down to Olympia and you try to argue for this stuff, and in tough economic times like this, everyone knows this is the stuff that's easy to cut. Just as a side note, kind of made me laugh yesterday. Like, why do I have this job? I got some call from our government relations guy who said, oh, some unnamed legislator is going to cut your public education budget to find some savings. I said, oh. And they said, but they really like those groups like the Beach Watchers. They like those groups. And I was like, well, do they know they're cutting the program they like? And I was like, no, I didn't know that. And so that just gives you a glimpse into the window we have to work to try to explain this stuff. So anything we can do to go to Olympia and all be on the same song sheet, saying we're pushing priorities, in these times, it is important. Because if we all go down there or everyone's arguing for their own thing, we will get nothing, I can assure you. And that's kind of where we're at now. So, sorry.
Nancy, can you hold it? Can you hold your questions until the end? I'm just going to try to get through this. Okay, so this is the basic structure of EcoNet as it stands right now. You have the broad EcoNet, all of you, the 450 members, 250 organizations. Some of those are just the fact that they've signed on and have done nothing more than that. There's others that have been in this from the beginning. On the right-hand side,